In the last section, we discussed how to create classroom rules and consequences, as well as effective ways to enforce those rules in your classrooms. However, having appropriate rules and consequences in place is only the first step in the positive discipline method. After all, our ultimate goal is to have the children choose, of their own accord, to follow the rules without need of consequences. Learning to discipline children in a positive, effective manner is a real challenge. There are many different disciplinary strategies, and no matter which approach you use, it will take time to implement it, and even more time to notice results. You need to know that there is no one right way to effectively discipline children, no magic formula that works all the time. If you choose a positive discipline method and it doesn't work, try another one. As we just discussed, there are quite a few options to choose from. One note: when showing children how to behave appropriately through the use of positive discipline, it is important to recognize that their behavior may get much worse before it gets better. This doesn't necessarily mean that the method isn't working. It may simply mean that both you and the children need to adjust to the new system. It is important to move on to another method if you determine that the one you are presently using truly isn't working, but wait until after you've given the current strategy a real try before deciding this. When it comes to altering behavior, 2 days, or even a week is not giving it a real try. You need to stick with your chosen methods for a while before choosing to move on. Several weeks is recommended. An important strategy to effective positive discipline is to be proactive. Be observant. Watch, look, and listen to your children. For if you can learn to identify potential problems and prevent misbehavior before it happens, your job will become much easier. We've already discussed some proactive ways to deal with discipline. For instance, making sure that you educate your children about your expectations, as well as the reasons behind them, is a constructive, proactive approach. Watching for and rewarding good behavior is also proactive. This encourages children to seek out attention for positive actions, rather than acting out inappropriately to receive attention. And once children learn how to gain our attention through positive ways, they will tend to continue to follow that trend. Another proactive approach involves careful observation. Watch the children in your classroom and see if you notice any trends. Do behavioral problems arise when certain children play together? Does Maria misbehave when she engages in certain types of activities? Is Frankie's behavior highly inappropriate when he's hungry or tired? Once you have identified behavioral trends, you can take preemptive actions to help prevent misbehavior before it ever happens. This may involve such things as redirecting a child to another game, or reorganizing your room so that certain objects are not within reach of certain areas of your room, or even restructuring your day so that certain activities are performed after nap time or lunch. Whatever choice you make, just stay objective and calm. Modeling anger management skills is also a very important proactive approach. We all get angry and frustrated at times. It's just part of being human. And eliminating anger and frustration is impossible. Instead, handling those instances in an appropriate manner should be our goal. And since children learn these skills from us, we should make sure that we are teaching as well as modeling effective ways to handle these situations. Avoiding power struggles is an effective positive disciplinary method. You are the adults, so you should have the power. But how do you eliminate, or at least minimize, the arguing, bargaining, etc.? One way to avoid potential power struggles is to offer a child a limited amount of acceptable choices rather than asking open-ended questions. For instance, rather than asking, "What would you like to play today?" you may ask, "Would you like to color pictures or play with blocks?" If both of these choices are acceptable to you, then whatever answer the child decides upon will be correct. The open-ended question, however, could result in the child running around screaming at the top of his or her lungs, probably an unacceptable choice in your eyes. Offering carefully worded choices will help children feel like they have some say in what's happening in their lives, while still allowing you to keep control of the situation. Plus, this approach helps them to learn how to make appropriate decisions on their own. One note: be careful not to imply that a choice exists if it doesn't. For instance, if your class is playing outside and it's time to go in, asking, "Are you ready to go inside?" would be inappropriate if the children must go in. Another useful positive disciplinary method is redirection. Redirection means just what it sounds like. Whenever it's appropriate, redirect a child's behavior. For example, if a child is throwing toys, direct them to throw small beanbags in a box. Or if a certain activity tends to cause problems for a child, direct them to another play area. The incompatible alternative principle is similar to redirection. It involves redirecting the child to do something that he or she can't do while misbehaving. For instance, if a child is throwing toys, you may ask them to help you pick out a book for story time, or help you set up for the next activity. In fact, it's even more effective if you can give the child a choice of two positive activities from which to choose, thus fostering their ability to make good behavioral choices. The when-then approach is another effective positive disciplinary method. In the when-then approach, offer a clear cause and effect situation. For instance, when you have put away the toys, then we will have story time. It is clear what action the children must take to get the desired outcome. As you may have already guessed, the then part of this formula needs to be something that the children want. If it is not, then this approach will be ineffective. The abuse it, lose it approach also uses cause and effect to successfully communicate expectations to the children. In other words, children must use things appropriately, or else they lose the right to use them at all. For example, supplies like crayons and markers can only be used if they are used to color on paper. If the children use these things to color on walls, carpets, floors, or each other, then put away the supplies. In this approach, it is important that the thing being used is valued by the children. It is also important to note that you need to state your expectations from the very beginning. The children must understand what you consider to be appropriate and inappropriate use of these objects, and you need to make it clear that using these supplies inappropriately will result in their loss. Then if something should happen, there's no discussion or argument needed. Just put away the items and move on to something else. For many years, the timeout approach has been a popular discipline method, and positive discipline has a very similar approach, though there are some differences. In positive discipline, the approach is called the take a break principle. The main difference between a timeout and taking a break is that in the latter approach, the child is responsible for changing his or her own behavior. When children misbehave, tell them to take a break and think about what they could have done differently. In other words, what actions would have worked better or been more constructive. Once they have reconsidered their actions and feel ready to return, they can come back and try again, this time using their newly discovered approach. As mentioned earlier, this principle puts the ball in their court. The children must discover appropriate behavioral choices on their own through personal reflection. Child care experts who successfully employ this principle typically have a specific isolated location, usually called the thinking chair or the thinking corner, in which the children can sit and reflect quietly. The children generally also have a pencil and paper available for them to write or draw possible variations. This is important because some children need to work things out visually in order for them to make sense. Another effective approach to positive discipline is to use actions instead of words to respond to behavioral issues. As we discussed earlier, yelling, blaming, arguing, etc. doesn't work. In fact, Sometimes it is best not to use words at all. For instance, if a child should be lying down during nap time, but he or she continues to get up and walk around, sometimes the best approach is to solely rely on actions. Don't say anything. Don't get upset or talk or threaten or reason with the child. Stay calm and take the child back to his or her spot over and over again if necessary. You might ask, how many times do I need to do this? Unfortunately, there's no specific answer to that question. It will take as many times as it takes the child to understand that you mean business and that you won't be flexible on your expectations. Positive closure is another valuable positive discipline approach. Positive closure builds on the concept of praise by adding self-praise into the mix. Self-praise is a crucial element to a strong, positive self-esteem, and once children develop strong, positive self-esteem, they will begin to monitor and improve their behavior on their own. Positive closure is a simple process. At the end of the day, take the time to sit down with the children, possibly in a circle time fashion, and reflect on the good things that have happened during the day. What progress was made? Who made good choices? At first, the students may need quite a bit of guidance to do this, but with time, they'll begin to be able to truly look at their own choices in a constructive way. Finally, in addition to helping children form good behavioral habits, it's also important to help them learn how to break bad ones that have already formed. This takes repetition. Just as bad habits were formed when they were continually repeated, good behavioral choices can be cultivated into habitual actions in the same way. One way to change habits is through tracking. For example, for every time a child puts away his toys properly, he or she can place a star sticker on a chart. When the child earns a specific amount of stars, he or she should earn a reward. After about 20 stars, the child will be more likely to automatically put away his or her toys. Keep in mind that changing habits can be a long process. After all, it took a while to form the bad habit. It will take a while to change it. But the process is well worth your efforts. In addition, it is best to prioritize the habits you wish to change and then change them one at a time. Once you have conquered one issue, move on to the next. If you try to change everything all at once, the children may feel overwhelmed by the magnitude of the situation, possibly giving up before you even start. Please remember that no matter what positive discipline approaches you decide to try, stay vigilant and don't give up too soon. Approach things in a thoughtful, methodical way, and you will see improvements in your children's behaviors.